Bonjour French 101 students, welcome to the first in a series of videos on the chapitre préliminaire, in other words the preliminary chapter. This is the chapter that will get us started with everything. And as you can see right here in this first chapter we have the title On commence, which means let's get started. And so this video will focus on the next couple of pages that we see here. This page breaks everything down. So we'll be looking at, besides this cultural component that we'll see in this video, we'll be looking at 4 different grammar and vocabulary points. And these are called compétences. And you will see these in the course calendar. So we'll have compétence 1, 2, 3, et 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. But today we're just going to be looking at géoculture, which is kind of like a world culture, welcoming us to the French-speaking world. And so we'll be focusing on pages 4 and 5, and basically the structure of each of the videos. We'll take a look at the chapters in the textbook. We'll take a look at a couple of PowerPoint slides that summarize what are in these pages. We'll look at some other sources beyond the textbook. I think the internet can provide us with lots of other good information. And then I'll show you how this all links up with the mind tap exercises. Okay, so as you can see, this page is telling us Bienvenue dans le monde francophone. So welcome to the French-speaking world. So we'll head over to a couple of slides that are going to summarize what is on those pages. You are responsible for reading them in detail, but this kind of summarizes the main points. Okay, so as it shows us here in slide 1, French is spoken in a lot of places. So as we see in this first section here, on parle français au Québec. Okay, so in Quebec, in Canada, on parle means we speak, or French is spoken in that place. Okay, surprisingly enough, some French is even spoken in the United States, en Louisiane. So in Louisiana, if you visit New Orleans, you might have the chance to see some French. Or on Haiti, so in the Caribbean, we can also hear French spoken in that country as well. Okay, and besides the Americas, French is spoken in lots of other places too. And you may not even realize that Africa has more francophones than any other continent. And the textbook tells us that the capital of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Kinshasa, has more French speakers than any other city besides Paris. Actually, I didn't even know that until I read it in the book. So we see again the same structure. On parle français. French is spoken, or we speak French, in the Democratic Republic of Congo and in Morocco, which is in North Africa. So we definitely see French culture in lots of places in the world. Okay, so if we head back to the textbook for just a second, on page 5, la page 5, okay, we can see that there are some pretty helpful questions there. I'm just going to expand this a little bit so we can see it a bit better. Okay, and I think these are helpful questions that will actually kind of jumpstart your research for your first cultural discovery project. If you've had a chance to look through the Blackboard course, to look through the syllabus and the course calendar, you'll see that in about 2 weeks, the first of these mini projects is coming up. And we can take a quick look over in Blackboard. If we go into My Classroom and then into Class Activities, and we scroll down just a bit, you'll see Mini Projet de Découverte Culturelle. So if we click on this, okay, you'll see that there are 4 of these mini projects, and they're just asking you to do research on different aspects of French culture and to share your findings in a discussion forum. So if we take a quick look at this very first cultural discovery assignment, hey, you'll see that I'm going to be asking you to learn more about a French-speaking country. Of course, you can research France if that's a place you have an interest in, but I encourage you to explore the many other countries where French is spoken around the world. So just to get you familiar with what these projects look like, the first step, l'étape, is to choose a country in the Francophone world, in the French-speaking world. So you have a map there that kind of shows you where all of these countries are. I'll point you to some other resources shortly. The second step, or étape 2, is to post a 250 to 300 word description in paragraph form. You can write these in English. Of course, I wouldn't expect you to write them in French when you're just starting out, of the country that you choose. And there are a few questions here to guide you, like why did you choose the country? What makes it interesting? Where is it located? Any other languages spoken there? I mean, just because French is a main language or even official language of a country, it doesn't mean that there aren't other languages spoken there too, and it's important to recognize all of them. You can tell us about the political system, economy, religion of the country, any cultural traditions, and any other interesting facts that you find out about that country. The other part that's really important is to include an interesting image, video, music file, website, audio file, etc. that expands on what you found in your research. I think that just makes what you share with us all the more interesting and dynamic. And make sure that you include links to any sources you used in your research. They don't have to be in a specific format. You can just include the links, the URLs. It doesn't need to be MLA or APA. We'll keep it relatively informal. And then after you've posted your research in the discussion forum that's created for this assignment, I'll show you where that is in a moment, you'll respond to your classmates in a response of about 100 words, kind of reflecting on what you thought was interesting in their research. So we learn about all different countries in this way. So that ties in really well to this cultural point that we're learning about right now. And to get to that discussion forum, you just click on this first link here, and it'll take you directly to that forum where you can create your thread and respond to other students. Okay, so that ties in, as I said, very well with what we're learning here. So these questions that you see here on page 5 of the preliminary chapter will also be good research questions to consider. So how many countries is French spoken in? You're going to get to choose one of those. Does French have a linguistic or cultural influence on all of these different continents? You can start with one of those continents and then kind of look for a French-speaking country within that. As it tells you there, Kinshasa, the city with the second largest number of Francophones in the world, is the capital of which African country? That might be a question that I would put on an exam, for example, so it's good to study that. Le Maghreb is a name for the region in North Africa where there are several French-speaking countries like Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria. So those may interest you. Maybe South America or the Caribbean or French Polynesia. These are all options for that first cultural discovery project. And just to add a little extra something to this whole exploration of culture in the French-speaking world, is that you might have heard of something called La Francophonie, or maybe you've heard of the British Commonwealth. And the British Commonwealth is the United Kingdom and all the countries that are kind of still associated with it, like Canada, Australia, etc. So there's a similar kind of organization called La Francophonie, and this is basically an international group of countries where people speak French, and they kind of promote the culture and the language around the world. Maybe a good website just to take a look at is the francophonie.org. And if you haven't studied French before, this might seem like, wow, it's a lot of French all at once, and maybe it may seem difficult to read. But if you really look at the words carefully, a lot of them are so similar to English words. And if you just kind of try to make the associations between English words and French vocabulary, you can see those connections. So like consultation, consultation, or ressources éducatives, educational resources. Those words are really similar, and the more you kind of recognize those similarities, the easier vocabulary learning becomes in French. So that's one website you can just kind of explore and look around a little bit. You can even check out the Wikipedia article and take a look at all the different countries that make up La Francophonie. If you scroll down a bit, you can actually see a map with that. It's a little bit small, so I actually found another website that has kind of more user-friendly way of looking at all the countries around the where people speak French. And so if we scroll down just a little bit here, it says, where in the world is French spoken? So it's the official language in 29 countries, puts it in second place behind English. So even though English is very widely spoken in the world, along with Spanish, along with Chinese, along with Arabic, these are all of the really large language groups in the world, French is one of these big groups. And so this is a great resource if you're just trying to think of countries you'd like to explore for that first project. You've got 29 of them to choose from here. And one interesting thing is that in our textbook, it says in that first Géoculture section, it says that about 220 million people speak French. According to Babbel, which is a pretty well-known language education company, it's more like 300 million. So it's somewhere in between there, I guess. And it's also interesting to know that French is the 6th most widely spoken language in the world, and behind Mandarin Chinese, English, Hindi, Spanish, and Arabic. So these are all the really big language groups in the world. Okay, and all these facts that I'm mentioning here might end up being on an exam, so it's good to take a look at this website. You can easily Google the title of it off of this video. Okay, so now that we've looked at the textbook pages, we've looked at the first couple of slides, we've looked at some other resources, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the mind tap exercises so that you know how they'll appear for you once you get access to it. Going into My Classroom, Class Activities, and then Mind Tap Resources. So once you've got it linked, you can click directly on this link right here, and then our week 1 Mind Tap activities should show up. And it just takes a moment for it to load. The only ones that correspond to this topic of this video would be PP4, Géoculture Review. I also recommend taking a look at the Getting Started video just because it'll introduce the whole Mind Tap system to you and maybe some sample exercises that will help you get familiar with it. But this one is a pretty simple exercise. So you're just clicking on it, and then it gives you some topics to review that kind of expand what's in the textbook. So it goes through Le Monde Francophone, some of the different countries that belong to the French-speaking world. And this gives you another good place where you can choose some countries that you're interested in researching. It also gives you this kind of introduction of French around the world. Okay, and it goes through different regions. So in Europe, the Americas, you can click through all of these, Africa and Polynesia, etc. Then you can navigate back to the menu, and you can even navigate it this way too. So you can do it by the boxes here or through the arrows once you get into it. And then over here, all you need to do is answer some multiple choice questions based on what you learned from those resources on the left, and just hit submit, and you're done with that exercise. The other exercises that you see here will come up later this week when I send you videos about the next 2 topics in this first part of the preliminary chapter. So that's basically it for this video. I'll be back to you in a couple of days with the next topic, which would be salutation formelle, which would be formal greetings. And I'll tell you a little bit about the connections between the textbook, the slides, and also the Mind Tap activities, and that should help to keep you on track. And I hope you have a great night.